I think we're good. Sync up here, nigga. Mama say don't play with them scabs. It's safe to say I see the reason I'm bleeding out. The most respect I've had for J. Cole, the closest I've come to understanding why he's considered so much more relatable than his peers, is when he apologized for dissing Kendrick Lamar in front of 104,000 people. Don't worry, this is not an essay about that awful, awful year. I too am sick of Big Three discourse, but when I watch that video, the one of him apologizing, hand in the air, it's easy to imagine it's of an artist in reckoning, coming to terms with what manner of man he is, just as the rest of the world realizes they haven't the slightest idea who that might be. I used to think the best thing J. Cole ever written, is that English? Toss and kill yourself. I used to think the best thing J. Cole had ever written was his guest verse on 21 Savage's A Lot. Now I think it might be the bonus track at the end of the first disc of his inexcusably long album, The Fall Off. I'm talking, of course, about Lonely at the Top. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a masterpiece. In fact, I don't think J. Cole has ever made anything I'd ever consider a masterpiece. Forgive me if you're expecting otherwise, but I'm not here to wholly praise or disparage J. Cole's work. If anything, I'm genuinely curious, because as I've been listening to The Fall Off, all 58,000 tracks of it, his long-awaited, supposedly career-defining album, I've been unconsciously asking myself, what kind of artist is J. Cole anyway? What makes him so enduring when similar artists like Cordae or even Big Sean have slowly petered their way out of the mainstream? Not to mention, if I'm being honest, some of the similar artists he's dwarfing in terms of popularity straight up wash him, at least in terms of pen game. Chance the Rapper or JID or Westside Boogie aren't even coming close to J. Cole numbers in 2026. Of course, it's easy to say that's precisely why he's so consistently popular. People like him because he doesn't challenge them. His music is quote-unquote safe. But I think that's a shallow understanding of what has kept Cole as a cultural juggernaut all these years. Sometimes, I feel like J. Cole is a constant exercise in nostalgia, in capturing and crystallizing and perfecting some spark, some zeitgeist that existed in the increasingly distant past. In my not so distant past, I was a massive J. Cole fan. Think about it. For a young person just getting into hip-hop, there can hardly be a smoother introduction. Cole is an incredibly proficient rapper, as I said, well-versed in classic and mostly modern sounds. He's charismatic, raps about everything from stunting and street life to despair and white supremacy. If there was a beginner's guide to 21st century hip-hop, it would probably be 2014 Forest Hills Drive or The Off Season. All the sounds you'll encounter as you delve deeper, but lacking the kooky vocal inflections of a Kendrick or Nicki Minaj, lacking the jazzy, improvisational sermons of a Chance the Rapper or Mac Miller. Not to say those artists aren't as or even more popular than J. Cole, but I'm telling you, far more rookie hip-hop listeners than you would think will choose J. Cole over Kendrick or Mac Miller, even accounting for the not like us in the room. And because of the discourse around that song, it is easy for a lot of hardcore hip-hop heads to see J. Cole as a coward, a man unworthy of inheriting that, in my opinion, bullshit mythos of hip-hop being a sport. You know what I'm talking about. Comparing rappers to basketball players, cheering at diss records like Bloodsport fanatics lining the seats of the Coliseum. People intend to live and die by the ideology that rappers calling each other gay and pedophiles and wife beaters is somehow good for the culture. I am a lowly outsider from the motherland, so forgive me if I'm overstepping. Hip-hop is not a sport. Primarily, it is an art form. And in that art form, J. Cole has been releasing some of the most accessible yet traditional albums of the 21st century. All his records have been usually consistent in quality, but after his second album, Born Sinner, he famously turned his back to what he felt the industry wanted from him. His music turned more rustic, more introspective, less focused on hit singles and more on memoristic attempts at self-mythologizing. He cut out features, and it worked. Of course, J. Cole went from Jay-Z's progeny to his successor. People consider 2014 Forest Hills Drive to be an instant classic, but this is why I ask who J. Cole is. The more I've outgrown my adoration for his music, the more I've begun to listen to it and question what it tells us about him. No, listen, from the sound of 2014 or Off Season or KOD, what do we actually learn? truly, deeply about J. Cole's interiority? What does he tell us about how he sees the world, sans passages about working hard and coming from poverty? With the exception of a few tracks here and there throughout his career, how vivid are the pictures he paints? Forgive me again, but it's like everything he makes is just a less unique version of the artist that came before him. His almost obsession with preserving the past and legacy in amber has made it so that, unlike his peers, his music doesn't really sound like it belongs to him. He is a palimpsest, and we still see the marks of what inspired him. We can still see the old, dusty shoes he seems determined to fill instead of just getting new ones. That's a metaphor, by the way. I feel like I have to say that because he's known for dressing like a homeless person. Nostalgia lies to us with the promise of reclaiming what is, what arguably should be, unreclaimable. Nas will never release It Was Written again. There will be no other Marshall Mathers LP. One day it would all make sense. It's not going to grace the radio waves. We're supposed to take these works and use them as soil, not put them in jars and place them on our shelves. If you listen to his old work, it's stunning, because you deadass can't tell the difference between his voice and early Eminem's, so it's clear he's come a long way in regards to making the work his own, but I worry a lot of that work is superficial. I worry about the let Nas down factor, that he's more interested in filling the position of his predecessors than in any kind of reconstruction. Honestly, he's like a less grating version of Logic that way. Please keep in mind, I am in no way implying that J. Cole is a bad rapper. I have to stress that because something about the internet makes the hip-hop community relieve themselves of brain cells. He's a talented rapper, but I just don't think he knows how to show us that. I dragged my feet to finish The Fall Off, deadass, like it was a month-long break before I listened to the second half. I just didn't feel any urgency in it. I was treading ground I treaded a million times before, both in and out of J. Cole's discography. You know the drill. Came up from nothing. There was a beautiful girl in my past. Nostalgia. All the themes he's been exploring and digging up and redigging and reburying for so long. Just laid bare. The more hip-hop, past and present I listened to, the more J. Cole's music seemed expected. Superfluous, even. Stay with me. In The Great Gatsby, Fitzgerald writes about a titular man who cannot escape the idea of his past. Gatsby grew up watching upper-class Americana prance just out of his reach. He is a person that is forever wrestling with forces that don't even recognize him as a factor. While J. Cole has been chasing the old hip-hop guard and the nebulous sound of the past, Gatsby was chasing class, ideas of old money and the social cachet, the love that comes with it. You know how the story goes. Most of my audience is American. Gatsby is trying to rekindle his love with his old flame, Daisy. He loved her when he was poor, when he seemed a toy to her, undeserving. Now that he has money, now that he has a way in, he's trying to bring his yesterday forward, relive his dreams now with all his wealth. When Nick Carraway, his friend, tells him he can't repeat the past, Gatsby looks at him like he's grown a third head. "Can't repeat the past?" he cried incredulously. "Why, of course you can." He looked around him wildly, as if the past were lurking here in the shadow of his house, just out of reach of his hand. As the story progresses, it turns out that Nick Carraway, the only bond of his built off the present, mostly, is the only true friend he had. What Gatsby was chasing, his green light, was not for catching. Even he must have known that, deep down. Of Gatsby, Nick Carraway writes, "He talked a lot about the past, and I gathered that he wanted to recover something. Some idea of himself, perhaps, that had gone into loving Daisy. His life had been confused and disordered since then, but if he could once return to a certain starting place and go over it all slowly, he could find out what that thing was." What is J. Cole's green light, I wonder? He, much like Gatsby to Carraway, is kind of an enigma to me. The more hip-hop I've listened to, the more familiar I've become with his influences, the less real J. Cole appears in my mind's eye. Fitzgerald wrote of Gatsby being gripped by the voice of his ex-lover, of his past. It was a voice that couldn't be overdreamed, he wrote, a deathless song. I think J. Cole's deathless song is a slide. Y'all fuck with that new Noah Kahan album? No? My fault. I used to think the best thing J. Cole had ever written was his guest verse on 21 Savage's A Lot. Now I think it might be the bonus track at the end of the first disc of his inexcusably long album, The Fall Off. I'm talking, of course, about Lonely at the Top. In that song, he writes that for years as a budding hip-hop fan, he felt like a kid watching older kids goofing about on the monkey bars and climbing up the wrong way on the slides. Then he grew up. His quote-unquote mom let him out to play, so to speak, but the slides are empty now. This hip-hop thing, this green light, this deathless song seems vacated to J. Cole. The people he grew up admiring too grew up, outgrew the slides and the monkey bars. They are business owners now, guests on celebrity cooking shows, performing for Trump, rapping about their transgender cats being Siamese, clinking wine with the same elite that hip-hop was supposed to be a rebellion against. And I get it. Listening to Lonely at the Top, I felt that for a moment I got a glimpse of who J. Cole is. I related to him and his sadness. I am an author, against my better judgment. I write fiction in a time where books are getting banned left and right, where the people who pioneered the medium are getting outed as rapists and groomers and transphobes and stalkers. I wanted it so badly when I was a kid, but the slides are empty now. My deathless song is but a distant hum to everyone else around me, and it begins to make kind of sense why J. Cole is so enduring. He is not just nostalgic, he's scared maybe, trying, if in vain, to guard a flame he seems convinced is dying. And he isn't doing it in a cringy, God called me to save you manner like Kendrick. He just wants it to be like what it was when he was a kid. I get it. I do. I just don't know if I'm allowed to agree. Because you don't preserve a flame by wrapping your body around it. You also have to add more fuel. The winds of change are indeed coming to hip-hop. Some people are even saying it is dying. And maybe they're onto something. Far be it from me to pretend I have insight. No genre, sans pop maybe, can be number one forever. Disco, rock even, all towers crumble under their weight eventually. Personally, I don't care if hip-hop is no longer dominating Billboard. I certainly am not looking forward to another beef to revitalize the genre. As of writing this, Earl and Mike just dropped the hypnotizing 30-track behemoth. Danger Mouse and Black Thought are teasing cheat codes too. The world is trudging ahead somehow. J. Cole can take the biggest swing of his career, trying to lasso the 2020s into a sound and place we've so thoroughly explored, and we'll listen, but we won't stay. We can't. Gatsby's and J. Cole's orgastic future was the hope that tomorrow could be a conduit for yesterday, but tomorrow is already here, and it doesn't sound like the fall off. I worry J. Cole is a boy, a boat against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. He's staring at the monkey bars and slides, waiting for his turn. Even after the big kids have left, even after the paint on the slides and monkey bars have begun to peel, even after rust bites and crunches away at the metal like piranhas, even after subgenre after subgenre after subgenre has been built upon that playground, it seems J. Cole is still standing there, still waiting, still waiting, still waiting for his turn. Did that shit in one take, nigga, yes sir! Salutations. Please don't leave. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I just want to say that my debut short story collection in Wonder Your People is finally available on all formats. The audiobook recorded by me actually is I think it's free on Spotify if you have premium. After that, the most affordable version is the ebook, which is like $5. If for whatever reason you like my writing and you want me to keep doing it despite the circumstances, then checking out the books or my Patreon would be a tremendous help. Thank you for not skipping this part, as you were.